Well, giddy up. Glenn, thank you for joining me.
Super pleasure. Thanks for being here with you.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited just because the OG of the breath, or the OG of the sauna world, who we learned a lot from through Mind Strong. And we'll go down all the rabbit holes of sauna, what makes great heat, the health benefits. So those of you listening, stay tuned. We're going to cover the whole gauntlet of sauna benefits and what makes it great, and the nuances of how to find the right heat and the perfect heat and what we call great heat around here. So we'll get to all that. But gee, just to get us started, how the podcast usually works, where are you learning and chasing edges? Where are you growing right now in your life?
Yeah, well, from a physical standpoint, you and I are talking with me here down in Austin, Texas, and in the spirit of sauna giving in ways that I can't even put into words. We've been given the keys to this castle of a good friend of mine's pad. I mean, really, about $4 or $5 million property down here in Austin, Texas. And you can see in my background the sauna that I consulted with the homeowner, and just a good soul dude. And I try to present myself in the best way possible. And this is where great things can happen. My wife and I are down here in Austin, but home for me is in Minneapolis and also in northern Minnesota. I split time between Minneapolis and an island in the north of Minnesota, where when the ice is not on the lake, that's where I spend most of my time up there.
Yeah, I've seen some of the pictures of the beautiful sauna you got up there, or the sauna. Sorry, I'll start saying it correct. I always gotta correct myself when I'm around you. Does that irk you whenever people say sauna?
No, it doesn't irk me in the least. And I actually wrote an article on Sauna Times that said, whether we pronounce it sauna or sauna, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you could say portage, like portage a canoe, or portage a canoe. I think we have something a lot more important to worry about, and that's the loss of the real meaning of the word sauna. Like, what is it? There's just a lot of marketing hucksters out there that have really hitched their wagons onto the benefits of sauna and the product, the physical being of sauna, and have made marginalized versions of it and call it sauna. So yeah, to me, I'm more worried about that than the pronunciation.
Well, let's get into the meat of it then. What does sauna, what is it supposed to mean? What is it to you?
Right on. Well, it's very simple. I mean, Webster's dictionary, I talk to any Finn, sauna is just a very simple space. It's a room most often lined with wood that has a heater of some kind, traditionally wood, sometimes electric, and even, on a very small examples can be gas fired, but generally it's wood fired stove or electric stove that heats rocks, and you throw on water on the rocks to make steam. It's that simple. Heat, steam, ventilation. That's the holy trinity of sauna. Anything that doesn't have all three of those is not a sauna.
I like that a lot, just because I already know there's a bunch under attack that don't fit that criteria.
Right. And, I really have no issue with other forms of sweat therapy, whatever it is, whatever it could be. I mean, people sweat in a lot of different ways, but, if you're doing infrared, and you love it, that's great. But that's an infrared therapy room. It's not a sauna. And when infrared hucksters start hitching their wagons to those health benefits, the reported health benefits of sauna, and call it for their own method of sweat therapy, well, that's where I have to really be bold and start picking apart these nuances, because I think people really need to know what is sauna and what is not sauna.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's also just such a research disparity in that realm, where like there's definitely some acute research on like the limited effects of infrared sauna, particularly like the detox level and that kind of thing, because it does serve a purpose in those categories for sure. But also, like, as you get into like the separation of the benefits, like one of the biggest, most resounding studies or not just one study or any study. There's so many studies done on the benefits, longevity, like health and longevity, where like the Finns and obviously the Scandinavians have spearheaded that research for decades upon decades. That's where I see, just from, again, somebody who's relatively new to the sauna, but I was doing it in football a little bit. And then obviously towards the end of my career, last 2 years of my career, And then obviously everything post, I'm all in on it in that realm. And obviously the thing I haven't been able to find is any long-term research on infrared outside of maybe a decade. But when you look at obviously the benefits of the dry sauna, the Finnish sauna, and you see these massive drops with consistency of exposure, massive drops in all-cause mortality rates, 35, 50% plus, and then these drops in Alzheimer's rates and everything. And you realize that this space, these sauna spaces, they're medicinal, not just for the body, but also for the mind and for the soul a little bit, where not to get too esoteric, because I love the community building aspect of it. And anybody that spent a lot, like one good sauna conversation with a bunch of strangers in there, you know the deal, and it becomes magnetic. And so that's when we get inside, because we can break down the infrared to sauna or dry sauna for sure. Is there anything that stands out besides like the imposter use of the word?
Well, no, you touched on a couple of things that are really quite important and significant for me. I mean, I've been partaking in the sauna experience for 35 years. I was a college kid. I was an American college kid, hitchhiking around, spent quite a bit of time up in the northern reaches of Europe. And that's where I got exposed to sauna that you and I know, with the wood fired. And you touch on the community aspect of sauna. And I think that's kind of one of the hidden gems. And you speak about pro athletes and stuff. And a lot of athletes come to sauna in a really kind of pure way, in locker rooms and what have you. And they're doing contrast therapy and they're hanging out with their players. And I'm speaking about hockey players specifically. A lot of hockey players, when you think about all the pro sports, hockey, I think, is a few steps ahead of other pro sports, and you may know more about this than I do, Brian, but you know, on every NHL hockey player or even minor league teams, there's a couple of fins. And you know, when these locker rooms and stuff get outfitted with sauna, you know, the fins collect and they bring that Northern European style to sauna, where, you know, there's even a couple of beers to be had. And, you know, you think about the health benefits, and it doesn't always have to do with the amount of time in the hot room, the amount of time in a cold plunge tank. There is a health benefit to hanging out with your buds and your line mates and talking over the game and having a beer and just sort of decompressing. And, you know, that's my life. I mean, look at where I'm sitting right now. I mean, this was all fostered on the sauna bench through great kinship. And you talk about the community aspect to it. And I think it's really underplayed. You know, we all want to have the physical benefits documented, but really, how do you measure these good times we have on the bench? And how we do that and how it helps with our health is still causation, correlation. We don't know yet, but it's damn good.
Yeah, and I look at it that way, and I go, there's not a lot of downsides to the sauna unless you abuse it, because like what is it? What's the saying? Everything's poison. It's the dose that makes it so. But in that realm, like the sauna, like it's hard to abuse it unless you start talking sperm count for somebody trying to have a baby, maybe in that realm. But like, okay, like I can, like the health benefits, even the performance enhancing benefits, if it's used tactically, incredible. But now you start adding like the camaraderie and community, because I think particularly when a group of humans is trying to accomplish a massive goal, like all these little intangible things add up, and compound interest takes its toll, and guys have raw, vulnerable conversations. Like I've heard so many people refer to the sauna as the truth barrel or the truth box, and you can look at it from a serum standpoint where it's like, okay, there's a little bit of norepinephrine coming around, there's fatigue coming, there's sweat, like there's all these things that are kind of accumulating in something that's going to kind of let your guard down in essence, and you can have some dynamite conversation. So
yeah, I would say, Brian, it's you know, when you think about nature, right, like going on hikes in the woods, for example, where there's a camaraderie element to that. You're all going on this journey together. Well, you know, sauna is a journey as well. Like you go into the hot room and there is no, like, just like going for a hike. I mean, there's no rule as to pace, right? Like some may be hiking a little quicker than others. Some may be holding back into conversation. And one of the things I love about sauna, as I know it, is the zones, right? Like you have a hot room, call it 180 Fahrenheit or somewhere in that range. Then you have a cool down space, which what I love in my climate up in Minnesota, it's like you got this 0 degree Fahrenheit day, and then you can have this temperate zone of about 40 degrees, somewhere around in there. And you get a couple of bodies in there, and they're like radiators, like with the mass of their body, like putting off steam into this room. And that room, to me, that climate is as magical as the hot room. And then of course you're outdoors, you know, whether you're going through a hole in the ice, or, you know, even just simple 5-gallon bucket where you're dumping water over your head, or doing a snow angel or what have you. What you've created there is this like this zone, like the zonality of 3 different climate zones. And then you're fostering this wonderful, spontaneous, you talk about community, right? Like this commune, you know, where you're going through this experience together, like a hike up a mountain at your own pace. And to me, it's just such a beautiful experience to share that with others.
Yeah, and I really like your approach to pace, because like everyone reacts to sauna differently. And then some days it's kind of, it can even be a gauge for you. Like, okay, I got 20 minutes stay at this temp. I got 30. It's either way, it's okay. And as I got my effect, I got a good sweat. Maybe I had a good conversation, or maybe I'm taking the journey alone. But now, like, because obviously I'm a huge contrast therapy sauna ice tub kind of deal, and it gets stuck in that fad modality where it's like, oh, like Joe Rogan does it, whoever does it, but really like that, like just the transition to and from at your own pace. Like, yeah, some of my favorite days are when I do it alone, and I have some music on, or it's just the birds chirping, whatever it ends up being. And it's like, okay, today, like, yeah, there's the rigid structure of 3 minutes, heavy sweat, 3 minutes, heavy sweat, dunk, get out, you're good. Like, that's the recovery. So you get the constriction, dilation, flush out the soreness. Okay. Yeah, I get that. That's the rigid side of the routine. But there's some days where you just get in there and you go by feel. And I've almost fallen asleep in the cold tub, where it's just like, I've been in there for 12 minutes. I'm not shaking, the sun's shining on me. And then I hop in the sauna, and then I get lost in my breath, and it's 40 minutes. And it's just like, in those days are just, I don't even have to do all the rounds. It's just like, I go by feel. And that's where something, I think that I think the temperature change that you're talking about in those zones, it brings you back to feel, because you'll feel when it's time to get out, or you'll feel when it's time to, all right, I need to get back in the hot room. Or like, you just get lost in a conversation. You don't even like know how you feel, because there's other endorphins going from the good community. And so I'm a believer, but can you speak a little bit on the history? Because obviously the Finns, and it's new to some people to like, oh, sauna, cold tub, when it's just been so cultural for them. And then even in the northern states in the United States, the saunas are like they're on the lakes, and everybody's like kind of just jumping and going at their own pace. And it's just kind of like
so this thing that's going on in America is quite funny to many of my friends in the Nordic countries, Finland specifically, because, you know, there's 5.5 million people in Finland, and, you know, there's 3 million saunas. And a buddy of mine says, he goes, there's 5.5 million Finns and 5.5 million sauna experts, because every Finn has an opinion of, you know, what they like and stuff. But there's a general consensus of few rules. And that's amazing to me, like, when you think about it. I mean, this is a country that has a lot of rules. You know, there's a lot of social, programs, and education is free, and, you know, healthcare is free. And with that, you have government with rules. There's signs everywhere, and people are very law abiding and stuff. But man, when it comes to sauna, there is no rule. And I prescribe to that, and I love that. And to your spirit, Brian, you know, when you talk about, I wrote about what you just said there. Is like, solo saunas are meant to be. And I have my own backyard sauna, and for 20 some odd years, like Tuesday or Wednesday, I would send an email out, and I love the Friday happy hour sauna. And so, you know, in more, when the kids were young and stuff, that was a magic time before dinner. After guys would knock off work, I would send the invite out, and I'd love it when nobody would show up. Those were my best damn saunas. And it turns out there was always some really wonderful thing that happened with my time alone on the bench and in the cold, pacing it on my own pace. And like you referenced, you know, everybody is different, and everybody is different at different times. And I love the no rule aspect, you know, like when you're hot, you leave, and when you're cold, you go back in. And one more bit on this is like, what better way to really know yourself? Like we know ourselves through exertion and heavy exercise, but this contemplative space that we're allowed to be in through contrast therapy is just medicine in its own right. I just know where I stand. I know when I'm over pushed. I know when I have to say no to that last beer. I know when I need a nap. Like I just know my body. So anyway, it's a bit of a tangent, but you asked about, do you want to know about the history of
yeah,
this?
yeah. I definitely want to go to the history, but I just want to touch on that real quick, just because, like, just by the temperature, it's this filter from technology as well, where I think a lot of the contemplation that comes from it is medicinal, in the sense where it's like people say silent meditation. I think sauna ice is one of my favorite forms of meditation. For sure, the ice is forced meditation, because I know I can't have my phone or like too much going on outside of that. And I think like that's special in and of itself, where it's just like this is before cell phones, where like this process had already filtered out distraction. And I think that's of note, just because the ability to get some silence for yourself, and you have some, like, there's some flow to it. It's not like you're sitting still and staring at a wall or a dot or anything like that, or looking in your third eye in that realm. But I think it's special that those solo sessions. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Sure.
And then I had something else I want to say, but we'll go to the history. Well, actually, no, I got you, because I've seen some of those the memes or whatever, where because I think it's so special, because I've had people travel through Finland as well, and know a couple hockey guys over there as well, where they have saunas in, like, single person saunas in hotel rooms. They have literally like the massive group saunas, and they've done the heat maps where it's like that, like their saunas are like our McDonald's or like our fast food stores. And I think that's all hilarious, because again, there's a drastic difference between this frequency of McDonald's and this frequency of such a massive benefit to health and human happiness. But I just wanted to chirp that for a second. But yeah, if you could break down the history, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah. So, well, of course we're going to get to the history, but we're always taking sidetracks. So
I love it.
I'll jump in on that. So, like an average to bad sauna in Finland is better than the better saunas in America. The bar is so high. And again, I just want to emphasize heat, steam, and ventilation. It's not that complicated, but we somehow, this practice, this sauna, this Finnish export, it's like, a buddy of mine says, this is like Finland's greatest export, but they didn't bring the manual. Like we've had to kind of recreate a manual because the Finns would assume that we would know how to do this. But I just want to share, like, ventilation is like a really tricky thing, but it doesn't have to be complicated. You could sit in a health club sauna that's like 190, 200 Fahrenheit, that's got really shitty ventilation, and you're in there for like 10 minutes plus before you even break a sweat, because there's no air movement in there. And the way I explain ventilation is like, if you're standing on a frozen lake in Minnesota and it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit and it's sunny and there's no wind, well, you can survive just fine in a sweater and stuff, but you have the slightest breeze and you're like, your ears are going to freeze off. And so if you think about that in the opposite, where you have a hot room that's got maybe 180 Fahrenheit that has some nice airflow in it, it's hot, man. And you throw water and you create steam in that environment, and you really got a kick-ass sauna happening. So in the motherland of sauna, even mediocre saunas have great heat, steam, ventilation, and that overcomes 90%. All this rigmarole about bench height and your feet at the rocks and you got to do this and you got to do that. That's a lot of American chatter about looking for building rules. And I just want to emphasize, if you focus on those three aspects and really drill into that, nerd around on my website, Sauna Times, and all over, and just you can become a pro sauna builder and be right on par with the Finnish saunas without a lot of chitter chatter and confusion to make that happen. So, all right, we're going to get to your question, or
no. Like, well, history is not even like, because I like this conversation, because like, I was just talking to Matt Brown. He's a UFC fighter here in Columbus, and he's on this whole Reddit line of sauna stuff. And he goes, I've been doing the research, I've been doing this. And I sent him my research protocols and that kind of stuff. And we'll touch on that here in a little bit. But he goes, have you heard the feet at the rock stuff? And I go, kinda. And then I go, because like in essence, he was talking about the heat being higher and then like how bad the barrels are and whatnot and those kind of things. And I go, really, like how I see it as my own little variant of that, as long as you have a great heater, like that cancels out a lot of the problems. And then so I don't steam. So the cool thing I'm learning right here is like steam hasn't always been a massive part of my sauna experience, because we'll get to the one you helped mentor Didon and Ken Zen on to help the boys with our big 16-person mobile sauna. But what I found anyways through my own practice was the ventilation before Didon broke it down to me as well. But I was actually doing some cold research for my girlfriend. She's a survivalist, and she was doing like a cold weather episode, or what if you fall through the ice? And that's where I learned about wind chill, and my own logic. I go, well, the inverse is true for the ventilation. So, and then I've talked to Didon since the creation of our big 16-person mobile sauna with one of your Kuma stoves in it. And he goes, if I had to do it again, like that space, I'd have a little more ventilation. And I go, why? And he hit me with the same thing I had just discovered from this cold research, where like I get confused on the convection conduction, but convection with the cold wind, you lose your body temperature, like I think it's like 6 or 7 times faster. So what is true heat? And like, and now you get into that same wind chill concept, or the air moving past you at 180 to 210 or whatever you're cooking at. I think that's special to understand, because I think that's overlooked. And because if you have really good heat, and then I've been fortunate enough to be mentored under the tutelage of you, and I know what wood burning does when it's beautiful, and compared to like an electric heater that has no ventilation, which a lot of those places in your general health club, or even like in my NFL facility, poorly ventilated, but properly, I'd probably say maybe even overheated, but but so I guess my question here, unless you have anything to add from my little rant right there.
No, ask and we'll rant. Go ahead.
The steam, how important is the steam aspect of your recipe there for the existing rules?
It's integral, right? Like no steam, no sauna. It's that simple, right? Like steam is, you talk about the health benefits of sauna, and that study that you referenced was it was a 20-year longitudinal study with Dr. Jari Laukkanen in the University of Eastern Finland, and it studied 2,400 and odd change men for 20 years, right? And it was a self-reported study, longitudinal study that talked about their health, and marked decrease in all-cause mortality, cardiovascular was a key component.
Neurodegenerative was in there too.
Exactly, through Alzheimer's, a 20 some odd % decrease in Alzheimer's and stroke. And so really what we're talking about here is real sauna, right? Like not fabrications of sauna. And when you throw water and you make steam, you're creating a climate difference here that is really significant in spirit, in mind and body as well, right? Like lolu is the steam, and that's a very spiritual thing to the Finns. When you throw water and make steam, like typically in Finland, you're quiet through that moment, and you ride that steam out, and you're listening to the soul of your sauna, because that steam is medicine. It's that moisture and that humidity intermixed, like with the heat. So the heat and the steam create this beautiful balance of climate, right? And that gets right in your bones, right? And not your skin. And so that penetrating heat, that's therapy right there. And so, you don't have to connect a dot from the health benefits in that research, except to understand that these were 2,400 men taking Finnish sauna, not fabrications. Finnish sauna, meaning heat, steam, ventilation, well-vented saunas, and it's that simple. And we create that for ourselves, and we can live happier, healthier lives, just based on the merits of that study. But what's so cool is like the Sauna Research Institute, which I'm a founding board member, and Jari is a founding board member of this as well, because we're integrating some really cool work using control groups, right? Because this isn't something that takes 20 years, right? Like you can start to get some serious benefits, like your well-being, like within 3 to 5 sessions. And so with this baseline business, and then having a study group and a control group here in America specifically, we're really excited about some of this, the foundational research that we're on the cusp of doing to talk about, you know, how this thing is helping people in ways that is just unquantifiable right now.
Yeah, and that's where Dr. Yari is an absolute monster. And then obviously we were affiliated with you guys for a little while, the Sauna Research Institute, since both you guys were, or you were based in Minneapolis when Mindstrong was up there, and then obviously John and his whole compound up there was what was involved. And I think that's the coolest part about it is it's, and before that, I want to regress to the first statement that you have to understand that longevity study was done with proper sauna. And so these other companies that are throwing around sauna research, or or they're stealing all these health research benefits and adding them into their Instagram posts and their TikToks. Hey, you get all this from this sauna. It needs to be taken with a grain of salt, or at least an asterisk, because like this was done properly and under that realm, because Dr. Yari is doing it right. And
exactly. So yeah, that's what we got to hang on to. And that's my mission here. You know, that's my, I want to be on more of these type of podcasts and discussions, because I really think that what you just said there is really the ultimate. And you said it in the right way, in a positive context, right? Like, you know, this is where we're going to leave other practices, separate those other practices, right? You know, it's like saying, hey, swimming's great for you, and here's your pool, and it's a hot tub. You know,
yeah.
I mean, good luck swimming in your hot tub. I mean, we want to present the climate and the atmosphere for the best experience, right? And the real experience, because when you feel good heat, it's all over. Your search is over. When you get in, like you, Brian, you tell me now, when you've brought in some of these guys that haven't experienced sauna into this sauna with the wood burning Kuma, I mean, do they get it?
Yeah, they get it very quickly. And they still want to cling to the temperature on the wall, which at times is 210 to 240 plus. And I've had some NFL guys in there even hotter than that. But in that realm, they like, particularly like in proximity to the stove as well. And then what's a good way to say it? Usually their quote is, it hits different. And that's all I usually get. It's not like, oh, I felt like I was heated up this way versus that way, but they know the feeling is distinctly different than their electric saunas at the facility and their infrared saunas at home. Cause
right.
And that, but like just a little nuance that always just like kind of, I think gets overlooked too, because you start talking about electricity and I know a little bit about like EMFs and all this concept too, but and my response to most things in life is return to nature and return to what's natural. And when I look at a sauna that's wood burning and ice that nature gave us in the wintertime, or we facilitate, but those are still natural temperatures and natural means of heat, and fire being probably the biggest paramount discovery and invention of human history. But like knowing that is what's generating this change, just like, I don't know if it's my soul speaking, but like, I know that's better than electricity, like whatever, 20 volts running right next to my leg. And I think that,
yes, let's nerd out on that, because I love that. And I prescribe to the very similar feeling. You know, my saunas up at the cabin, wood fired, are just like otherworldly. You know, they're in that proximity to nature and using that fuel, you know, the fuel of fire. There's something indescribable of what that is. But, you know, over my shoulder here, this is a 7x8 hot room, 8-foot ceiling, 7 foot by 8 approximately. There's a 9 kilowatt electric in there. I've been sauning here every night for about almost 2 weeks now. And you know, I'll admit to you that before this, I'm on a pilgrimage here. Before this retreat, Brian, you know, my knowledge of electric was thin, because I'm such a wood-fired nut. You know, all the saunas I've ever built, all my own saunas, all my mobile saunas, wood, you know. So here's a little trick that I've been learning about this electric, right? So if you fire it up like a good hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours before, and you set it hot, like 180, 200. And if you have the right kind of heater with a lot of rock mass, right, when it's time for round one, you can shut it off. And this is what I've been practicing on. And I'll go in the hot room, and there's the red element, the elements are off, and you're just using the latent heat in the rock. And it's quite impressive for electric to go in there and you throw water, you make steam, and you're just using the heat that's the mass, the lampomass, that thermal mass of that rock. That's as close to wood-fired and a smoke sauna, a savu sauna, that I think electric can get to. And when you think about one of these health club saunas with the toaster oven on the wall, you're never going to get there. You don't have the mass. But these new electric heaters, the technology of a big rock mass with electric is really kind of changing some of the dynamics for those that are constricted and need to use electric as opposed to wood fired.
Yeah, I wondered that just because I want to know how, and one of my questions down the list is, how important are the rocks?
Yeah, you mean like, yeah. So let's talk about, I would say they're very important because it's a balance. And you referenced something about heat, right? Like, and I want to nerd out with you and the listeners about the 3 types of heat transfer. Okay. There's radiant heat transfer, there's conductive heat transfer, and there's convective heat transfer. That's it. That's not types of heat. That's about heat transferring. So whatever the source is, whether it's the flame in a firebox or an electrical element, it's transferring that heat. And how it gets to our body is up to the dynamic and the design of that sauna hot room. And I'm working with thermal engineers. And Brent, I'm so excited. I'm working on an article right now that talks about the jazz trio of heat transfer.
Let's go.
And when you think about this as a drum, a bass, and a piano, now you can really kind of like easily describe and communicate the 3 types of heat transfer, because your radiant and your conductive, they're like drum and bass, right? They carry the rhythm, and you can't have all of one and you can't have all of the other. And I'm going to explain that really simply. Like if you just had heavy radiant heat, that's just like a drum solo. That's just banging in your ear, and it's like that hot sun you're feeling, right? And if it's all conductive heat, like that means your rocks are hot, but you're getting no air heat, right? Like your air, you're not getting any radiant. Well, you go into the hot room and your benches are cold, but the mass is there, and that's a special thing, but it's not optimal. And then the third one, that piano, that's carrying the heat, through convection. And you want to tune those 3, right? A sauna builder who's really good, and I would say there's not many in America that are tuned like this. But when we tune the jazz trio, now we have this thing, like you referenced some of your guys that say, wow, this is different, right? You can't put words into a great mix, but we are starting to distill the dynamics of the 3 methods of heat transfer. And it's really exciting. This is like 400 level sauna stuff that I don't know anybody in America except a few that I'm nerding out with, these engineers and stuff, but it's really powerful because this is objective. It's subjective and it's objective in the same way, just like music.
I like that a lot. The symphony of sweat, the proper symphony of sweat.
Right on.
Or
jazz trio. It's a trio, right? And then you could say when you throw water. Now, here's one other element. This sauna over my shoulder. We have a lot of athletes that are kind of, they want this 200, and they're electric, right? And they're confused because on the dial it says like 210, but the temperature gauge is saying 160 or 170, and they're pissed. They're like, this thing isn't getting hot enough. But you go in the hot room, and if it says 160 at the thermal sensor and stuff, when you throw water and make steam, and then you quickly go outside and you look at that thermostat, it's gone up. It'll go from 160 to 180, no problem. And a lot of this, here's a misnomer, Brian. A lot of people think that when you throw water and make steam, the temperature in the room goes up, but that's not the case. What's happening is, again, it's that convective airflow. You're creating this air movement through steam, which is really a beautiful thing, because when you got that airflow, that convective airflow, it's feeling hotter.
Yeah. And I'm even trying to think through the function. My brain's probably not big enough for that, but like with steam rising, does it push some of the hot air back down and through and around?
Yes. Beautiful
Awesome
job. Yeah, they call it the Lolu pocket. Lolu is the steam pocket, and obviously it's hotter above. But I mean, I'm in this thing about your feet at the rocks, and then there's a principle that I've been preaching for 2 years now, where 2 fists over your head, like what's the optimal bench height? Well, the general rule of thumb is when you're sitting on the upper bench, you want to be able to put 2 fists over your head to the ceiling. Well, I'm even debunking that a little bit. This sauna over my shoulder is not that. It's a good foot and change, and it's no big deal. I mean, I like to have a Venic or a Vita, or it's a whisking broom, you know, like it's usually made out of birch leaves or oak leaves and stuff. And so we'll dip that in hot water, and then you can, like, you know, it's really good for your skin, all those natural oils and stuff. And it brings out a lot of the oils and, you know, a lot of impurities in your skin and stuff. It's a very natural thing to do in Eastern Europe and Latvia and Finland, Russia. They're all big on this thing. So anyway, I'll either take a little towel or my Venic thing, and I'll just spin that around, and you get, you know, a lot of people are over engineering this stuff, but I'm telling you, you can get great airflow through steam and just moving air around with a little towel or a Venic whisk. No big deal.
Just to compensate for maybe a sauna that's not optimal or not engineered optimally, or the architecture is not perfect. Where,
true. But one more thing, that stratification is a beautiful thing. And here's what I'll do, like this sauna over my shoulder, and including my sauna in my backyard. So you throw water, you make steam, and you're really hitting it hard, and you're taking it. And then, you know, when the time to leave the hot room is?
Whenever you feel like it.
When the idea of an ice cold lake plunge is about the best idea you've ever heard.
There you go. I like that. Yeah.
It's so, yeah. Sometimes when you listen to your body, not your skin, you know, you're like, my core isn't there yet, but I'm fucking blasted. I mean, like, this is, so it's okay to be a low bench Larry. I mean, you get down there, and then what you're allowing yourself is a little bit more time for your core to get to that moment, that magic moment where you open that hot room door, and you're thinking nothing else about it except the lake plunge. That's a good sauna round.
Yeah. That's a great metric.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a subjectively beautiful metric in that realm.
And it goes back to everybody is different, right? Like the idea of a lake plunge is different at different times for everybody, you know?
Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah. And that's why I like low bench Larry. I think it's a great place to hang if it makes you comfortable.
Yeah, but there's always the levels, like, and then seasons outside always dictate some of that too. But there's top bench, there's low bench, there's the waiting room, still radiating heat from bodies. There's outside, there's in the water. Yes. There's this full spectrum for whatever place you're at, or whatever place you're trying to get to or get closer to. Yeah.
Well, there's one other bit to that on the cool down, right? Like when you're in a cold plunge, you know, you're taking that, and, you know, and I've learned this from breathing, you know, like breathing exercises and stuff. And I love that 5-15, you know, Harvey got me on 5-15. So when you go in, I mean, you're discombobulated, you know, and I just close my eyes and I focus on my breath, and I give it 5 breaths, and invariably my body is centered after 5. And then I just, like, total Zen, as you well know, Brian, you know, I get in the Zen state, and I try to just give myself 15 long, deep, mellow breaths, and then I'm out. And then that's the magic, right? Like, you know, your endorphins are rushing, and you're not cold. But it's nice to get away from wind at that point. Otherwise, you're kind of rushing yourself back into that hot room, because that wind will just, like, it'll send a false trigger to your head. Like, this is cold, man. Let's get hot again.
Yeah. And I found that a little bit, regardless, I've been around some wind too when I get out of the cold, and the cold will give you a little, like, fake defense for a little while, where it's just, whether it's the numbing and the thawing that occurs after that, or like the sharper cold from the wind chill and things like that. But it's still, like, I just, part of the beautiful thing about the cold is the fact that it reframes your brain and your relationship with cold and cold water in particular, where we always use the bit where it's like, when's the last time, like, you went outside without your hat and gloves? Your mom told you as a kid that you get sick and die if you go outside like that, when really, in reality, like, we have these systems in our body built up this defense, and then now we're amplifying it with, like, actual submersion and the numbing and the constricting and the vasoconstriction that's happening, where I just think that that's been really powerful to watch people change their relationship with, some guys actually water, but two, the biggest one being cold, and then you see the anxiety build up before the cold at times and those kind of things. And to see them kind of put that anxiousness to rest and learn to enjoy and even crave the ice, I think is just one of the most powerful things of that world. Where, and the sauna, like obviously it's a safe haven in that category of cold, but I think that's just one of the better teachers is the relationships we have with these extreme temperatures too.
For me, sauna is always part of the cold. For everybody in Finland, this water element is de facto. There is no sauna without that. At the bare minimum, there's a cold shower. You outside of the sauna is the shower room, and you would take a cold shower. It's just the way it's done. Most saunas, like northern Minnesota, are dotting along, shorelines of cold lakes. And this is just the way it is. It's interesting. A lot of people are coming to sauna through their experience with cold, but, sauna and cold are just, it's like peanut butter and jelly. It's just always been one in the same. So it's kind of fun to see this interest in America of contrast therapy and those coming to sauna through cold. We'll take it anyway, but it's sure great to see, people getting into this stuff.
Oh, guaranteed. And like, even when the whole infrared dry sauna comes up, I go, heat's better than no heat. Mm-hmm. And so we can spoon feed it and baby step it in with the infrared and all that world. And to your point though, like I do think we may like I think there is also the separation of experience and performance here too, where the contrast therapy is not always the right time. And where I think the United States has taken it and ran with it is like the isolation and the leverage and hijacking the physiology when it's like, and that's where you lose some of the soul of the experience, but you do steal the health benefits and time it up, because like, obviously now it's like, when's the best time to isolate cold? When's the best time to isolate the sauna and maximize and optimize? And I think obviously Americans always abuse that level of thought, like, and you see it in the production and manufacturing of products in the United States and et cetera. And we're not going to go down that route, but, in that realm, I do think, obviously both have benefits. I think they're magic together. And then when there's no expectations, you just know it feels good. Like that's a whole nother level of experience. But for those of you listening, like if you are just a one or the other person, when it comes down to it, like a lot of the misconceptions here are like, because in the football world, okay, hard practice, get in the ice tub, get your legs in the ice tub. Guys, they don't even go up to their chest. They go up to the legs and they still scream and kick and moan and in that realm. And then, but like a cool nuance I found while I was in Minnesota, and maybe this is just because it's Minnesota, but I ended up seeing all the habits around it. But when I first got to Minnesota, I wasn't a big sauna guy. In Canada, we had steam rooms. It's just what the team had to offer. So we didn't have a lot of sauna. We had like this high-tech infrared, which was super weird, but besides the point, it felt like you're being cooked in an oven. It looked like an oven, the inside of it too, metal plates on the inside. Like, yeah. But besides the point, but I get to Minnesota, then after every practice, like Harrison Smith, Anthony Barr, Everson, like all the studs on the team were getting in the sauna after. And in my lack of wisdom at that time, I'm going to go up to my neck in the cold tub and intimidate people, and they think I'm crazy, and I'm getting better recovery than them, even though I wasn't. I was actually stunting adaptation. And that's where like that's starting to finally work its way out. But I still run to people all the time where like, no, like we cold tub our legs after 2-a-day practice, or we cold tub our legs after any practice and training camp. And it's just like, no, you're misunderstanding the power, one, of heat. I think a lot of the world that got stuck in that whole rice model, rest, ice, compression, elevation, lost the magic of heat and movement. And one of the biggest benefits is the fact that the sauna mimics an aerobic workout, even a vigorous workout for some folks in that realm. And movement's always medicine. And I think we got into, again, I think America went the wrong way with some of the rest, ice, compression, elevation, immobilization world, where really, like, because they used to hard cast ACLs, and now the day after the surgery, they're moving it and that kind of thing. And they're moving more towards massage therapy, red light, these heating concepts, whether it's convection, conduction, or like the actual friction, those kind of things, where I think like now you start to get into like the actual roots of heat being medicine. And now you get to the pinnacle, which is sauna. And now you see the aerobic benefits. And then they've done all the high performance studies on, okay, after conditioning and hypertrophy, for sure, you should be in sauna for 20 minutes, just stealing health benefits, growth hormone, upping in true endurance. They've done those. I know, you know, the studies on the ultra marathoners and the marathon runners, upping their ability to run to perceived or to exhaustion by 32%. Like all these little things that compound were like used separately, awesome tools. But again, that's where I think together they're magic. And again, I also do think I'd like to hear your experience with because some of the sauna and ice can be exhausting at times if you're using it ineffectively. And when I get into some of my athletes that like, no, I feel great after this, so I'm going to do it every day, and they become basically victims of like, do you own the routine, or does the routine own you? And they can't insert feel and pick and choose and how to remove it. Have you noticed anything with that as far as those that are exposed to your Finnish model here, where like sauna and water go together? Have you noticed anything there, or any experience or anything that stands out?
Yeah, there's a few things I noticed. And I'll speak about that on a couple levels. Like there's myself and my experiences. And again, this is something I do 3-4 times a week for 30 something years regularly. I mean, I'm like, you know, I don't miss sauna. That's just part of my life. So oddly enough, there are times where, you know, I just not hitting it hard. I almost feel like I've wasted the firewood. You know, it's like I got this thing up, you know, to temp, and in my first round I'm tired. I'm just, you know, and I don't force that. I just accept that. You know, everybody is different. Every sauna session is different. Conversely, there's times where I'm in there and I can't get enough. I'm like 5 rounds and I'm like, you know, I love this. And you know this with the Kuma, like you pull the coals forward, you know, do you do that?
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's like, sometimes I'll be like, you know, should I do another round? And then I always say, well, I'll let the stove decide. And I go in and I look, and if I still have a good bed of coals, well, I'll pull them forward and I'll bring that middle lever up all the way. And it's like a bonus round. You have so much latent heat in there, so much fuel in that firebox. And I'll be just like, give it to me, you know, give me that round as hard as you can dish it out. And I just take it really hard, you know? So I think that's part of the athlete mentality problem, is that there's always this performance aspect where I just think if athletes, or all of us, just sort of let go of that, trying to have that control over the process and just be with it, you know, be one with it. And no matter what you do, like there's times on the cold, there's times, what I love about maybe my final round, I have a side saddle water tank of hot water. And my wife will, you know, use that. And that's a traditional bathing deal. I mean, I barely use our shower. I mean, I'll shave in the sauna. I have a Finnish bar of soap, which I like, and it lathers nice for shaving and stuff. And that's the extent of it, you know. And sometimes what I'll do is on my last round, I won't hit the ice cold. You know, I'll temper just some ambient water and dump that over my head, because I just don't want to stress my body out, you know. So that's my reaction on a personal level. But I see this with friends of mine, you know, and it's hard for them sometimes. And I'm going to distill it to 3 things. Okay. It's diet, hydration, and fatigue. All right. These are the 3 inputs that are macro inputs that can affect our sauna session. Just like you as a pro athlete and stuff. I mean, I'm sure any of those 3 elements can really mess with your game or your practice. Like I have friends that have just, they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to be a little late to your sauna. I got to stop and get something to eat. And I'm like, don't do that. I said, just get a banana, you know, and, you know, you treat sauna like you would aggressive sport, you know, it's a stress on your body, and you don't come to sauna starving, and you don't come to sauna full, because it'll compromise your sauna. I mean, that, you know that, right?
Very, very much so. And I think that's a great look at it too, that it is like a performance. It's a stadium of its own sense. And it's
Beautiful.
not just a spa, you know.
Yeah,
it's not just this thing that's guaranteed relaxation. No, like you need to come correct and
come prepared. Yeah, you owe it to yourself, because I mean, a lot of my sauna sessions are 3 hours, you know, and I love this magic time of about 4 p.m. It's pre-meal, and you know how great food tastes after and
Yeah.
stuff. And then another magic time is like that 8 o'clock deal where I'm well digested, and you could have an evening sauna, and then God, you just sleep like a baby. But you know, that evening sauna is tricky because you can't have a couple, you know, if you have a couple of beers or whatever, guaranteed you're going to wake up in the night and have to take a leak, you know.
Yeah.
So I like the afternoon time. But yeah, so those are three. Now I want to talk about hydration, because like this bottled water business, I think you're going to see something that's going to come out in the near future, and that this Aquafina stuff and this heavily filtered bottled water, you know, that's devoid of all minerals. And I think, I don't know this like, you know, scientifically or whatever, but when I used to drink reverse osmosis water at our Minneapolis home, and I would come out of sauna, I'd feel good, but I'd feel fucking exhausted. Like, what the hell? And I realized that this reverse osmosis system depletes all the minerals from the water. So when I switch, because up north, when I sauna at the cabin, I feel great. And when I went to Finland, I took 50 saunas in 12 days. And those guys are nuts about mineral water and stuff. And that's a practice for them. They're on the game of hydration. It's not about water, it's about minerals in your water. And to me, that's the second thing. And knowing my body like I do so much, whether it's sauna or just, you know, going for a bike ride, I'm super in tune to minerals. And there's the 4 key minerals. I could name them, but magnesium, iron, potassium, sodium. You got to watch that shit. You know, are you on that program?
Yeah, massively. And I'm hoping to get Darren O'Lean on here soon, because he's a master in that category too. But that's like, in essence, in his verbiage, it's a fatal convenience. Like, yeah, the bottle, great. Okay. Like, you get it to go, you can take it wherever you want, but you're getting the BPAs, particularly like the Aquafina has been known to be one of the worst, but the plastic bottles in general. And then you actually get into the energy that's transferred. And one of the coolest things I've been exposed to recently is like drinking water right out of the creek in the mountains up in like Montana and Idaho and things like that. And then even in New Zealand and things like that, where the water just tastes so different. But now, and I have a crazy Dr. Thoma who's been on the podcast a couple of times too, but he exposed me to this in high school, where he was getting his reverse osmosis water from Whole Foods and then inserting trace minerals. And like, that's basically how you do it, because you're defending yourself. And then I was just, I've heard it from multiple people all in Columbus, Ohio, and Missoula, Montana, and Las Vegas or Los Angeles. I can't remember where he was from, but besides the point, arsenic in the water, like how the cities clean the water's trash and all these things. So really to do the best defense, like it's almost like I can get distilled water or reverse osmosis, where distilled, like it's completely stripped of everything and you can insert it back. And it's just an extra step to truly understand what good hydration is. And now you start talking about the effects of sodium, great starting place. Now you add potassium. And then now, like then you can get into the whole spectrum of minerals, but in that realm, like, but it's in a healthy manner. But like, I just think people sleep on the salt effect, like the sodium effect, and that really cool book called The Salt Fix that breaks that down beautifully too. But if you want the right synapse and literally your body and your nervous system and all these things, like you need to be properly hydrated and between your muscles, but like, but people sleep on, because like people will do a glass of water in the morning, cup of coffee, then like they won't drink a glass of water. Like I think I saw something like the average person only drinks like 3 cups of water a day. And when really in reality, you start looking at high performance, like some of the bigger bodies, and there's different equations for how many liters each person should get. Like I've read based on my body weight, it's anywhere from like 3.2 to like 5 something, like over a gallon of water. Wow. And so it's just like there's so much variance there. But again, I think like especially when you're putting yourself, you're going to put yourself in the stadium, on the practice field, in the weight room, or in the sauna, like you need to come correct. And hydration is, I say breathing's the lowest hanging fruit in sports performance, which I completely believe after seeing like the lever it's been for professional athletes and military. But I think sleep, I'll put sleep first. But yeah, sleep, breath, and hydration, lowest hanging fruit. Not got to do a lot. You can go get the reverse osmosis massive jugs, take care of yourself for a week at a time, 2 weeks, whatever. And like now, like if you do that for 2 weeks, I guarantee you feel different. And like, and that's where I always, with all my athletes, whether it's with the breath or not, I address sleep first, then I go into the breath, and then I go into hydration, and then we'll go into diet and nutrition. But again, the awareness for what you just said too is like what's in your stomach and what part of your system's reacting right now. Because we're talking about going into a stressor, which is sympathetic. It's like it's a healthy version. It's like pursuing the hormesis hedonic adaptation concept, where there's a little bit of stress equals the right adaptation. You just start to level up and become more resilient as a human. Awesome benefits there. But where if you're putting food in your stomach, you're trying to lock yourself and you're getting blood there instead of blood circulating through the body. Same reason you don't do that before you practice or before you lift. I want my blood carrying oxygen doing its job. I don't want it digesting food. Yeah, man. And then now, yeah.
Yeah, Brian, I want to get weird for a minute. And I have a hypothesis about hydration. Okay.
Feed me.
I'm going to draw an analogy, and in your research with your other guests and stuff, if it's relevant, bring this up. So in Minnesota, I'm not sure, in a lot of places, right? Like if you have grass growing, and if you're watering that grass all the time, the roots never go deep. But if you let nature take its course and you let that grass go dormant, through natural processes of a summer drought, those roots are stronger. And I noticed this. It's just my own little weirdness, but I practice intermittent fasting. I'll have a cup of coffee in the morning, whatever. And if I can ride out my first food intake until about 11, that works for me. I mean, I'm 60 years old, so my metabolism is different. I don't recommend this for younger people or whatever. But so that intermittent fasting works. But I wonder, Brian, if we're going to see an intermittent hydration movement. And where I'm going with that is when I deprive myself of water, I'm not a water nut. Like I don't have water. I don't have one of those 32-ounce things. I'm not hitting that thing all day long because I want my cells to be thirsty. And I think that analogy of the grass is worth pursuing.
No, I hear that and I see that. And I wish I had more like research on it because I had one of my like a regular on the podcast is Dr. Eric Serrano. And we were talking about intermittent fasting, and he brings everything into it, food, water, everything, like different nutrients. And I've seen different documentaries on and particularly in Europe, the long-term intermittent fasting to like cure crazy things like cancers and all these other conditions. Like I probably can't quote it accurately, but in that realm, he was talking about water fasts and what they do. And I can't recall. It's probably 3 Serrano podcast listeners. Again, hydration's in the title, but or water fast is in the title, I think. But he talks on that where it is a thing. And because it used to be the myth that you can go 3 days without water kind of concept. And I think he did it. I think Serrano did it for like 3 or 4 days and started to hallucinate. And but like no, but I would agree that because like the same as intermittent fasting, like particularly long-term intermittent fasting makes you incredibly your cellular resilience and your cellular efficiency very efficient in general. I misspoke there, but in that realm, I would assume hydration would work in the same aspect because, and then now I'm thinking through the Krebs cycle and all this stuff, but I don't know anything about your grass analogy, but I would assume any resilience like in that capacity, even if it's just mental from the ability to, and it's like a reframing of the cold, like, oh, I need water, blah, 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 or I'm thirsty. What is that truly doing to your like mind, body, soul, and cells when you say no to these urges?
Yeah. And then, so I'm not suggesting that we deprive ourselves. I'm saying that we hydrate at the right time. And what I mean by that is like I don't drink water a lot during the day. Maybe I should be, scolded for that. But when I know I'm going to sauna, I think of my Finnish friends, the pros that sauna like madmen. And I'm one of them. I sauna like a madman. I sweat like crazy. So there's a magic time where I'll drink 32 ounces of mineralized water. Maybe it's an hour and a half or 2 hours before sauna. And it's a lot like the Wim Hof breathing, like I'm supercharging my cells with oxygen, and here I'm supercharging my system with hydration. And I feel it. I feel like $1 million. I feel like I can climb a mountain because I'm really hydrated at the right time. I'll drink those 32 ounces, then I'll fill that 32 ounce up thing again, and I'll make sure I drink that before round one is over. I mean, that's 64 ounces of water, but man, it's just like a jet fuel of hydration into me. And I feel wonderful when I do that.
I can see the function of it. My brain's not big enough to know like how perfect that is for like your cells and how much water you can absorb with consuming X amount. Cause I've heard like, cause now you get into like the alkalinity effect of like overhydration and things like that, but like it's replacing what's going out. Like, okay, I'm replacing it with the right electrolytes, the right amount of hydration. So maybe on top of the detox that's happening in the sauna, like maybe that's like a like an oil change, you know?
Yeah, you sweat better. You sweat better too, because there's nothing worse. And I don't know if listeners have ever had an experience like this, where you're sitting on the sauna bench, or maybe you're on a bike ride, or maybe you're on the practice field, and you're not sweating.
Yeah,
that's a freak out, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, guaranteed. And it's just like, it's almost frustrating because you've sweat at this temperature at this time. And it's just like, okay, well, something's off.
Yeah.
And it's either my system or my hydration. And usually, and like, that's not like a good feeling either. You're not really enjoying the sauna if you're not sweating in my own. So it's, but like, that's again, like to your point about us getting lost in the protocols and when to hit it. And instead of feeling what we feel, and knowing that, okay, today's a good day and I can go hard. And because but what you're speaking on is what we're trying to tangibilize in the performance world with the velocity-based training and all the trackables and that kind of stuff, is we want to know what days we can go hard and what days we can pull off or we have to back off because the CNS didn't recharge or whatever it ends up being. And we're like that, like person to person, you can feel that in the sauna anyways. I know for a million% fact, the cold, like I can tell you, just right when I touch the ice, whether like I slept good last night, whether I'm hydrated, all that. It just, I think that's a great illustrator of your state is the cold by itself. Cause I do the cold a bunch by myself in the morning, usually, particularly in the winter time when I have the tub, cause the cold shower is a little different. It's kind of subjective, but the cold tub I know is definitely a gauge, like a gas gauge from, is my system ready to go today or not? And I can usually, even before I get in the tub, I know if I'm hydrated and if I slept well. And then I count like most days I count my breaths in there, same as Harv and you, and like you've adopted the 5-15. I do 8 breaths, and some days that's 2 minutes and some days that's 4 minutes, you know, and but usually it's around 3.
Beautiful.
And so it's just and if I can't hit that, I let go of the force to keep that pace, and I just relax and I dunk and I go about my day with new.
You know, this contrast therapy business, one of the things I absolutely love, I've had some buddies come over with their heart rate monitors and stuff, and they're up there. I had one guy like north of 150 beats per minute, and he had to go sit in the cool down. I thought the guy was going to have a heart attack. But you go in that cold plunge, isn't it just the greatest feeling in the world to listen to your heartbeat and how that thing slows down?
Oh, it's beautiful. And it's and I again, people, you just have to feel it. Like you don't have to track it, you just got to feel it. But it's just, you go from thump 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 to peace, and then and you get to a point where you don't even hear your heart rate anymore, or depending on how much ice you have on your chest, you won't even, because like I like filling up the ice tub sometimes with like 220 to 240 pounds of ice when I'm coaching sometimes, so that people can feel their like 360 breath, like they can breathe into their sides and they can keep the breath out of their chest if I got them nasal breathing and stuff like that. Or just like it's a coaching cue. But then now when we get down and like my more aggressive coaching, we'll hold our breath in the ice tub, and you get this added pressure. Like you have this nerve on your face. It's like kind of like a raven's foot, but it's your mammalian dive reflex. And I've gotten competitive where I do like max holds in there, which I do not advise anybody to do that's listening. But I've held my breath for like 2.5 minutes under the ice tub after like my second round of sauna. And I've gotten to the place where I literally have multiple seconds in between each heartbeat, and it's magic. And you get out and it's just like it's a whole new level of Zen. And like that's like a super aggressive version of it, but just feeling the transition to go, like, cause I like, and there's metrics I use with guys depending on the system and like the protocol we're following, where like some people just have to know how long to stay in the sauna. And like, I just say, feel how you feel, go until it's uncomfortable, and then you can come out. And like, usually that's what I leave it at. But like, when guys have done it with me a few times, I go, get your heart rate to 120 and sustain it for 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes is good. 10 minutes is great. And so, and then they come out and do that. And then particularly the hockey guys and one of my fighters, they see that basically like they pull up their data after they're done. You see this roller coaster of the line, and you just go, how cool is that? And then one of my guys who I've done a bunch of work with, so people those listening, this is definitely a veteran, but you see literally like a cliff when he does his breath hold in the ice. And it's just, it's really special. See, like it gets to the point sometimes where the monitor won't even register it.
Amazing.
And it's those are the fun things about it. And it's all it is your body reacting to the environment. Your body is one of the most incredible, smartest machines on the planet. And if you get back to what it's capable of and its feel, and this again, now you get into the immune system benefits, and I don't want to make it all about the benefits, this way of life and this lifestyle that you've forged and helped bring to the United States. But now you start talking about how comfortable have we become, and particularly into temperature, because one of our biggest stressors used to be environmental stress back in the cavemen days, environmental stress and food scarcity. And we've solved those things in spades. But like the heat and the AC inside, and you go from our bubble from 70 degrees in our house to our car to work to our car back and home, like that's not what our system's meant for. Our system's meant to be in the environment. And like, I think that brings you closer to presence anyways, and the ability to feel and ebb and flow. And I didn't even realize that till I got out in nature, like backwoods, like 50 miles from another human for a week. And you're just a little uncomfortable all day. And I just think in my back of my head, well, if I live like this the whole time, I bet this wouldn't even bother me in the slightest. But how I look at the sauna and ice, you're stretching your system, you're stretching your comfort zone. And now maybe 67 degrees doesn't bother you because I've been in the cold water, and maybe 77 degrees doesn't bother me because I've been in the heat. And it's just like, and then now you get into like this actual cellular resilience, cold shock, heat shock, all this, the cellular magic, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, all these other benefits that come from the sauna, which are again, special. And we don't need to know all that to know it's medicinal, but I know the sauna and ice for me has made me more resilient to temperature, and it's just given me more peace and more control when other people are affected. Oh, it's cold in here. Oh, no, it's not. Why? Well, why not? Well, because I've been here before. Oh, it's warm in here, isn't it? Like my body's working. I can be a short and t-shirt year round if I really want to be. I just think I think that's special, that it's just, again, like you got to expose yourself long enough to know it. But I just think people, like the immune system and looking at, again, return to nature concept, like we're supposed to be exposed to a little more temperatures than 70 degrees. And again, it just so happens that this beautiful tool of the sauna brings resilience with it too, on top of the million benefits we've already talked about.
Yeah, man. Well said. Good.
And then another, just can we rip through the history a little bit and kind of, and then even like your experiential history of the sauna too would be beautiful.
All right. So, one of my mentors, one of my key mentors in this space is Mikkel Aaland, who he's Norwegian by birth. He traveled around the world in the 70s and wrote this iconic book called Sweat, where he studied the sweat practices of many different cultures. I could listen from the Native American sweat lodge to the, Turkish hammam and the Korean baths, and of course the Finnish sauna, and it just goes on. And dotted all over the world is sweat bathing with different names, but very common fundamentals. And so this thing we talk about, sauna, is from the Nordic region. It's certainly the best exported version, I think, arguably, and I've heard, because of its simplicity, right? Like it's easy to build a room like this, and it's easy to create a heat source like this, and to carry this. So, there's, like down in the Mayan world, the temescal is foundationally very similar. It's just how they're done is a little bit different. In the Mayan temescal, in the Native American, rocks are heated outside of the room and then, brought in with like deer antlers and, and all that. So now you have this, it's lampa massa, that thermal mass, that heat mass of rock, and then always steam. Sometimes in different cultures, there's different herbs that are brought forth, and the practices are very, very spiritual and very traditional all over the world. So that's a history of sweat bathing globally. I mean, it goes back as humans go back, as society goes back. Now this Finnish practice, it's centuries old. We talk about sauna, which is a smoke sauna. That's the traditional sauna. That was a sauna that was around before the Iron Age, before there was any steel at all. And what that was done is a room was built with log, an enclosure, and a fire was built in this room. And the rocks were heated through direct flame contact 4 or 5 hours worth. And then the fire is extinguished and the coals are brought out and the small windows are opened and ventilation is brought forth. And then you close it off and you go into this room and you throw water on the rocks. And to this day, this is the most revered type of sauna in Finland and many parts of the world, the sauna, the smoke sauna. The smoke is not in the room. The smoke is gone. There's talk about the health benefits of this carbon that's in the room. And, your ass is black sitting on the bench. There's no question. There's a lot of soot involved. So they have these little paddles that you sit on naked. You're sitting on that, and you throw water. It's a beautiful sauna. It's a little cooler. I'm talking maybe 140, 160 Fahrenheit. But the steam, again, we're back to heat, steam, ventilation. The steam in the sauna is a soft steam. The Finns love it. I love smoke sauna as well. Then you had the Iron Age, and then you had this idea of creating stoves with rocks on top. And that was a monumental shift of convenience because, you didn't have to deal with this long burn. It's called a continuous burn system, where this is what we know as wood-fired sauna stoves today. The fire is going and we're in the sauna and there's no smoke in the room thanks to the chimney, and then we talk about the electric, as the next evolution of convenience to that. So that's the tradition of sauna, using that heat source in different capacities as time went on.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just illuminating too, where it's just not, again, I just wanted to illuminate the fact that it's not a new practice. It's not ours. It's borrowed. Right. And it's been manipulated I think it's definitely on my to-do list to do a sweat lodge, particularly on led properly on one of the reservations potentially as well. Yeah. Just to experience. Then I'll get over to Europe at some point too, where it'll be fun.
So it's interesting. Also, we talk about a guided experience. Like a lot of people, it doesn't matter American or wherever, but a lot of people these days, they want to have a guided experience. Yoga, you can do yoga on your own, or you can go to a yoga class and stuff. And there's value in a guided experience, and it's a borrowing really of the Native American and the Mayan cultures, where in Germany, Aufguss is a very, it's the way sauna is done, and it's done through structure. And it's a borrowing of this, where everybody enters the hot room at the same time, and there's an Aufgussmeister, a host that carries through the process and introduces different essences in the water, throws water on the rocks, and does a performance, swinging the towel around for ventilation and air movement. And then the Italians have picked up on this practice and created a lot of theater around the Aufguss experience. And it's a show, and you go to these big bathhouses in Germany and in Switzerland and that part of Europe, and they'll have like a dozen different saunas and hot rooms, and they will have Turkish style and the Roman style, where the big tiles are hot and stuff like that. And then you'll see on the blackboard, at 22:30, Helmut is going to lead Aufguss, and at 22:29, everybody's standing outside of the sauna, and at 22:30, everybody goes in there, and there you go. You have a performance, a sauna as a performance. Very unfinished, not Finns wouldn't do that, but it's just another, amalgamation of this practice that's really interesting.
Yeah, but it makes sense, and I see that I mean, you see it in leadership in general, where it's the relinquishing of responsibility, where you can maybe get you a little bit more in the moment because you don't have the responsibility of keeping time or even feeling how you feel. You just know you're there, and you're going to listen and you're going to follow suit. And I've had Logan Gelbrecht, who's a friend of mine, Strong and Harv, and I don't know if you've met him yet, but he has this theory, and I think it's incredibly accurate, that like people want to be led. And I don't think it's incredibly accurate for your sauna exposure, but by any means. But there's times when, like, even in the breath world, where people can hold their breath longer because they're being led. They don't have the responsibility, and they're not tracking time, and they don't have this other weight and stressors happening, where there's room for both. But that is interesting, but it's understandable as well. And like, I mean, obviously I'm a coach, so like I am usually performing for others in the realm of sauna and ice, but in that realm, I'm educating, and hopefully I do a good job. And people that are listening that have been coached by me know that it is a feel thing, and it's okay to return to feel and lose the structure. But also there's time, again, to use both separate, both together. But like, again, like if you're looking for like the true spirit of sauna, let's go by feel, and let's go with good company.
Right on, brother. Well said.
Yeah. Well, we've been ripping for an hour and 15. And I mean, those of you that are listening, I'll post sauna protocols alongside this, along with benefits. I've posted it maybe 4 or 5 months ago, but I'll repost it just so we get some of that out there and keep some of you guys curious. And now that you've listened to the podcast and kind of understand the whole spectrum of what sauna is, what good heat is, and maybe even evaluate the saunas you're using currently. And if you're in the market for sauna or need any advice, I'll link Sauna Glen here on everything you need to know with sauna times, and also his podcast, Sauna Talk. And I'll have the links for all those in the bio. And then I guess one other little nuance, just because I keep running into the people that are doing the DIY stuff, DIY in their sauna, and they're worried about insulation, or they're worried about the heater. Do you have, because I know you're a friend or affiliated with the Kumas, you're a distributor there, but then you brought up the Ito, is that what it's called?
Yep. Well, so I wrote a book on how to build a sauna, and I help many people in that, and it's a great book. It's a DIY book. You don't have to be a DIY guy to really get a lot of great information from the book. A lot of people will use the book as a springboard for their contractor, their brother-in-law who got like booted out of a job, and now he's got a table saw, and so he's got to play a favor back. So it's like, building a sauna is just such a magical thing. I mean, there's hundreds of stories I could share about how families have come together, fathers and sons have rekindled the, relationship, a brother-in-law and a brother, and look at the product that you build, and you get to enjoy that. So that's one of my jams, this DIY sauna build. And I love the Kuma stove from northern Minnesota. It's a kick-ass stove. It's the best heat I've felt, not just in North America, but I was able to enjoy 50 saunas in 12 days in Finland. I've been to Finland 3 times in 3 years. And I love what I love about good heat is it's a universal. And when I go over there, it's heat that I'm very well familiar with, and we can create that in our own country. And I'm a big shout out to that stove. That stove. The thing is super efficient. It's a beast. It will outlive all of us. I built a 612 Sauna Society sauna. It has a medium Kuma in there, and that thing is revved up since 2016. And we barely had to tune the damper on the thing. It's just, if many public saunas use Akuma because it's so reliable and it's so efficient with its wood usage. So a plug to those guys. But I try to stay outside of Kuma. I stay kind of agnostic. I've helped many sauna builders get into business, and I'm all about the rising tide of good sauna, is lifting a lot of boats. And it's exciting, to climb the authentic ladder like this is my thing. When you feel good heat, it's all over, and I love helping create it for others.
Awesome. And so what's the name of the book real quick, and I'll link it in the bio?
It's called Sauna Build, from start to finish. Sauna Build, start to finish. And it's you can get it on Sauna Times. And and there's also the search bar on Sauna Times. There's about 900 articles about this practice, sauna. The sauna as a noun, the place we go. Sauna is a verb, a thing we do. I've really got into it, and I love sharing it with others.
Glen, you're an absolute stud. Thank you so much for hopping on, and everybody that's tuning in, hit all the links in the bio. Hit all his socials will be linked in the bio as well, and then as always, like, subscribe to all social platforms and podcast platforms for Chasing Edges. Massively appreciated. We'll take as much support as we can get to spread the good word of all things good and all edges that you need. But Glen, one more time, thank you for your time. Incredible conversation. Yeah.
Kindred spirits. I'll see you on the bench soon. Sauna days, the first week of May. Maybe we'll get you up to northern Minnesota. There's nothing like jumping into Lake Superior. I'll share more information with you on that, brother.
Oh, guaranteed. Yeah. I don't like Matt. I think Matt's fighting the 13th, and I'm doing some breast stuff with him. So I might have to come up right after that. But or actually, no, I'm driving through. For 2 events. So I'll see you. I'll chirp you when I'm ripping through Minnesota.
Love it. Love to see you.
You're the man, dude. Be well.
You too.